Now to an incredible find overseas, an elaborate series of stone monuments believed to have been hidden for thousands of years, not far from the famous site of Stonehenge.
It's been called both a healing site and a place of human sacrifice. Where did its extraordinary megaliths come from?
For a century, the story of Stonehenge's altar stone seemed settled, anchored to the Welsh hills that shaped its supposed origin. Yet, when new tools peeled back its chemical past, a different landscape emerged.
And it suggests that mysteries that shroud this region are bigger than many of us even thought.
Carrying whispers from Scotland's far north, and revealing a connection that reshaped not only the monument's history, but the world that built it. The story we thought we knew. For generations, the altar stone at Stonehenge stood as a quiet monument to a narrative shaped in 1923, when geologist Herbert Thomas proposed that it belonged to the same Welsh sandstone family as the monument's smaller bluestones. His conclusion, drawn from careful visual inspection, thin section microscopy, and the limited analytical tools of his era, aligned neatly with the broader idea that Neolithic builders gathered their materials from the Preseli Hills before transporting them across southern Britain. Museums embraced the interpretation, guidebooks presented it as settled fact, and archaeological education repeated it until the story felt inseparable from the monument itself. The stone's unusual texture and composition were noted, but rarely challenged, as the authority of Thomas's work shaped a century of scholarship. By the mid-20th century, the Welsh origin had become more than a geological claim. It had become part of Stonehenge's cultural identity, folded into national heritage narratives and archaeological timelines. Few questioned the assumption because it fit comfortably within a framework that imagined prehistoric Britain as a landscape defined by local interactions rather than far-reaching networks. That intellectual stability began to shift only when a new generation of researchers returned to the stone with tools capable of revealing details far beyond what the human eye could see. The first anomaly and the rise of geochemical forensics. The first indication that the Welsh narrative might be incomplete surfaced when researchers brought portable X-ray fluorescence devices to museum fragments associated with the altar stone. Dr. Rob Ixer, Professor Richard Bevins, and Professor Nick Pierce expected to confirm the elemental patterns traditionally linked to Welsh Old Red Sandstone. Yet the scans revealed a persistent mismatch that disrupted that expectation. The fragments displayed an unusually high concentration of barite, a barium-rich mineral phase absent from every known Welsh source previously considered relevant to the stone's composition. This was not a minor discrepancy easily explained by weathering or contamination, but a geochemical signature so distinctive that it challenged the entire foundation of the accepted origin story. As the results accumulated, the team realized that they were confronting more than an odd data point. The presence of barite acted as a chemical marker pointing toward geological environments far removed from Wales, and its consistency across multiple samples suggested that the stone's cementation process occurred in a region with unique mineral conditions. The technology itself became part of the narrative, because portable X-ray fluorescence allowed researchers to analyze artifacts without damaging them, expanding the scope of inquiry beyond the constraints that shaped earlier scholarship. Instead of relying on visual comparison or selective thin section analysis, scientists could now record precise elemental fingerprints directly from the stone's surface. This shift transformed the investigation from a reaffirmation of tradition into a reconsideration driven by data. Each new reading hinted at landscapes that did not match the Welsh profile, prompting researchers to widen their search and rethink long-held assumptions about the stone's past. The anomaly evolved into a guiding thread, pulling the investigation toward deeper methods capable of identifying the stone's true geological lineage and preparing the ground for a discovery that would upend a century of certainty. Rewriting geological time. The investigation deepened when Anthony Clark and his colleagues at Curtin University turned to the tiny zircon grains locked within the stone, each crystal functioning as a durable timestamp formed during ancient geological events. These grains preserve the ratios of uranium and lead isotopes that reveal the age of their parent material with remarkable precision, allowing researchers to map the deep time history of the sandstone that ultimately became part of Stonehenge. When Clark's team analyzed the zircons, they encountered an age distribution unlike anything associated with Welsh sources. Instead of matching the known profiles of southwest Wales, the zircons clustered between 1 and 2 billion years old, accompanied by a distinct group around 450 million years, a combination characteristic of Scotland's Orcadian basin. To confirm that this was not an artifact of sampling or laboratory variation, the team employed laser ablation U-series dating on the barite-rich cement, binding the sand grains together. This method targeted the cement's uranium and thorium isotopes, yielding a chemical signature entirely incompatible with Welsh bedrock, but fully consistent with conditions documented in northern Scotland. Each layer of analysis reinforced the next, producing a network of independent markers that converged on the same conclusion. The researchers then compared their results to the most comprehensive Old Red Sandstone database available in the United Kingdom, achieving a statistical match of 95% with outcrops from the northeast Scottish coast. This level of alignment, published in Nature in 2024, left little room for alternative interpretations, because the fingerprints match not only in broad characteristics, but in the exact age peaks and elemental patterns formed during the region's geological evolution. The evidence moved the conversation past speculation, reframing the altar stone as a relic shaped by northern landscapes and transported across Britain through means that scholars had never seriously considered. A monument that pulled the North and South together. The realization that the altar stone originated in northeast Scotland introduced logistical questions that reshaped archaeological thinking, because transporting a 6-ton block over roughly 750 kilometers required coordination far exceeding earlier assumptions about Neolithic Britain. Researchers studying prehistoric mobility have proposed that long-distance movement of heavy materials was not an isolated event, but part of broader networks that connected distant regions through rivers, coastal passages, and overland paths shaped by seasonal occupation. These ideas gained momentum as evidence accumulated from sites across the British Isles, showing increasing cultural exchange during the late Neolithic period, suggesting that communities interacted more frequently and across greater distances than previously believed. This narrative grew stronger when archaeologists examined developments in the far north, particularly at Ness of Brodgar, a monumental complex whose scale and craftsmanship indicate that Orkney functioned as a major ceremonial center between 3200 and 2500 before Common Era. The walls, pigments, and architectural forms discovered there revealed a sophistication that paralleled or even preceded the emerging monumental landscape of southern Britain. Pottery styles, carved stones, and symbolic motifs show that ideas traveled southward from Orkney, implying that social influence may have extended along maritime corridors that connected the Northern Isles to Wessex. In this context, the movement of the altar stone appears less like an isolated engineering achievement and more like material evidence of a cultural flow that linked distant communities. These connections reshape Stonehenge's significance because they place the monument within a network rather than a local tradition, suggesting that its builders participated in a wider ceremonial world whose reach spanned nearly the entire length of Britain. The missing quarry and the unfinished puzzle. Archaeologists working along Scotland's northeast coast continue searching for the precise outcrop that supplied the altar stone, yet no confirmed quarry has been identified, leaving a gap that underscores how much of the monument's journey remains hidden. Field teams have sampled dozens of old red sandstone exposures, comparing mineral ratios, cement textures, and zircon populations to the laboratory profile established through earlier analyses, but none have matched with the specificity required to designate a definitive source. The absence of a quarry does not weaken the broader conclusion. Instead, it highlights the complexity of reconstructing prehistoric landscapes that have been reshaped by erosion, sea level changes, and human activity over thousands of years. While the stone's geological origin is now firmly anchored in northern Scotland, its route south remains a subject of scholarly debate. Some researchers argue for a maritime passage that followed coastal waters and river systems, noting that Neolithic communities possessed the woodworking skills necessary to build large vessels capable of transporting heavy cargo. Others suggest an overland route that relied on sledges, rollers, and communal labor, despite the dense forests and wetlands that once covered much of Britain. Neither scenario is supported by direct evidence, which reflects the inherent difficulty of tracing perishable technologies and temporary pathways used more than 4 millennia ago. These unresolved questions do not diminish the importance of the discovery. Instead, they reveal how each answer opens new avenues for investigation. The missing quarry and ambiguous transport routes serve as reminders that the story of the altar stone is still unfolding, guided by methods that continue to reshape archaeological expectations. What this discovery changes about prehistoric Britain. The confirmed Scottish origin of the altar stone challenges long-standing assumptions about how Neolithic communities interacted, revealing a level of connectivity that extends far beyond what earlier models envisioned. Rather than isolated groups defined by regional boundaries, late Neolithic Britain appears increasingly interconnected through shared symbols, architectural traditions, and ritual practices that moved across great distances. The emerging evidence from northern ceremonial centers, especially those in Orkney, suggests that cultural influence may have flowed southward with a consistency that reshapes interpretations of Stonehenge's role within a broader ceremonial landscape. When paired with the extraordinary logistics required to transport a 6-ton stone from the far north, these insights emphasize the scale of planning, cooperation, and social complexity embedded within prehistoric networks. The altar stone therefore becomes more than a geological artifact. It becomes a testament to the reach, ambition, and imagination of communities whose capabilities continue to surprise modern researchers. A single stone carried across Britain reveals how deeply prehistoric societies were linked, reminding us that ancient ambitions shaped landscapes far beyond their horizons. If discoveries like this can overturn a century of certainty, join us in exploring the past more closely by subscribing, sharing, and continuing the journey with us.